Welcome to Real Relationship Goals, a podcast all about the realities of healthy relationships. Real Relationship Goals is a project of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual violence or harassment and is seeking support, services, or needs more information, links to resources and our hotline number can be found in the description. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of their organizations or affiliates.
Remember, yeah. Break. Oh
Again,
boy.
I'm not leaving you
there. One more. This one's on. Please. Hi, Mom. All right.
Oh, wait. Hola, mamá.
All right, this one's one too.
Okay.
See you real quick. Oh, I lost my bear somewhere. Oh well, that's okay. Oh, we're good. Okay. Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Real Relationship Goals. Mini summer season. For some reason, that feels a little bit like a tongue twister. Don't know why. Episode 4. This is our last one of the summer. So good to see you again. I'm Kyla.
I'm Arianna. I'm Maria.
All right. And we're going to jump right on in today with our story brought to us by Arianna.
Yes. So today we get to talk about Twilight. And if you don't know what Twilight is,
How?
it is a series, and it is very interesting and also funny at the same time. So high school student Bella Swan moves from Arizona to Washington State. Then she meets this guy named Edward Cullins. Yes, that is his name. She moved from Arizona to Washington State with her father. It is very cold in Washington State,
Yes.
as I saw in the movie. So Edward Cullen is a mysterious teen who's very intrigued with Bella. Edward is a vampire whose family doesn't drink blood. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's interesting.
Well, human blood.
Human blood, yes. I just
Admirable.
love doesn't drink blood, but human blood. That's a good, note.
Distinction.
Yeah. But that doesn't drive Bella away or frighten her. So she enters a dangerous romance with Edward, and during this movie a lot of different things we're going to put inside the foundation of their relationship. One instance, Edward admits to watching Bella sleep in her home. Even before they became a couple. I think this is after the incident where he saves her from getting hit by a van. And
It's not really an invitation to watch somebody sleep, though.
It is not.
Yikes.
But I think this is where she's kind of sort of trying to figure out what is he about and how did that happen? How was he able to save her in that moment? Because it's a van. and you're a person. You stopped the whole van from hitting me. So yeah, there was one incident where he was watching her in her sleep at her home. And when Bella goes shopping, there was another incident where she's harassed by a group of men, and Edward is just mysteriously pops up right there to save her. And his excuse or his reasoning for being there at that time was that he was there to keep a close eye on her.
Yikes. Stalker alert.
Right. But while this is portrayed in the movie to be romantic and protective, realistically it highlights in real life how these behaviors would be considered red flags. Right. Even with incidents like these in the movie where it seems like Edward is protecting Bella, it's also could be considered stalking or a type of aggression. right? Being real persistent and aggressive with wanting to keep an eye on somebody that you just recently met, but you're just real intrigued with. So those can also be like a component to like seeking and finding out what red flags are. Also in the movie Arise, where Edward thinks like he needs to save Bella. So like he's gone as far as to like scolding her for stop getting into trouble because it seems like you can't take care of yourself unless I'm there. And like she's just very incapable of making decisions for herself. So as those things arise in that movie, it's just important to highlight that it's important to identify those red flags and green flags. I think there were some green flags in that movie as well.
Mainly from her dad.
True.
My man.
Noted. That is just really important to identify those early on, so you're able to establish those boundaries ahead of time in a relationship, and just like, because safety is always a priority in any relationship. And that is my spiel on Twilight.
Good job. I watched the first like 2.5 Twilight movies for the first time last summer. A very different experience than whenever most of my peers were watching them in like 7th grade. Would highly recommend waiting until you are like in your mid-20s to watch the Twilight movies. It makes it, in my opinion, a lot more fun. They are wild. There's definitely a lot of red and green flags in those, for sure. So a wonderful story for today. Thank you. Very applicable. So in case you have not noticed yet, or in case you missed the title on today's episode, we are talking about red flags, green flags, beige flags, and how to read them. We noticed the beige flag trend popping around on TikTok, and we said, that seems like fun. We want to get in on that. How do you read those? How do you interpret those? And then while we're at it, how do you really read and understand like green flags and red flags, and what are you even supposed to do about them? So what can it mean for your relationships? How should you take that into account? So I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a lot of fun today. And if you want to join in on future fun, we're looking to kind of increase our engagement with our episodes. So we're going to be posting questions and opportunities for submissions on our Instagram. So be sure you're following us at ACCVC_prevention on Instagram. So come and find us and get ready, because season 5 is coming up faster than you think. So red flags, green flags, beige flags. I'm going to say the word flag a lot in this episode. I think it's going to be happening a lot.
We'll have to have a tally of how many.
Yeah. But what do they even mean? How do we interpret these things? I feel like they get thrown around a lot right now.
They do. It could be the slightest incident, and it's like, that's fine. That's fine. But in speaking of red flags are basically negative traits that someone might display. And green flags are positive traits that people display. And beige flags. I'm new to this trend, so I'm not quite familiar with
Learning
beige
as we
flags.
go.
I'm learning as we go. It's something slightly odd or unusual that a person might say or do that isn't necessarily good or bad, but it's just unique. It's extremely unique. So
Very special to that individual person.
yeah.
It's just one of the things that I always see popping up, is especially on TikTok, of people being like, oh, there are no unique experiences. And then the beige flag trend came around, and there were people being like, oh, well, my boyfriend does this, or my girlfriend does this. And every single time it was something that never in like human history have I ever heard of anyone else doing that thing. And I'm like, maybe there are some really unique experiences.
Yeah. You just never know. You never know.
But something I think that can be easily mixed up, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but this is just something I think there's a distinction between red flags and abusive traits and characteristics. Like, I don't necessarily think it's a one-to-one of if it can be, it absolutely can be, but I don't think that all red flags necessarily mean that someone is abusive or is actively abusing somebody else, but what do y'all think about that?
No, I agree. I think.
Would have been real awkward.
Invalid.
Okay.
I think sometimes we think of green and red flags and we take it to the extremes, like there is no middle ground.
Yeah.
No beige flags,
Yeah.
but no, opposite ends of the spectrum, but it doesn't always have to be like, he hits me, that's red flag, which is valid, that is a red flag, but it could even be something as small as they are rude to the wait staff or like the servers at a restaurant, or they like are very controlling, they're like a little bit overly controlling, like, you can't hang out with this person, or I don't want you saying this, or I don't like the way you dress. Or it could even be like, on the like the far end of the spectrum, it could be that they're aggressive, that they're, physically, verbally, mentally, emotionally, all of the abusiveness.
It's kind of like, I tend to think of like red flags as being kind of like indicators or kind of like warning bells or flashing lights for, hey, this is something you need to keep an eye on, because there are lots of things like in like over controlling behavior and in like being rude to like wait staff and servers and things like that. There are indicators of kind of like a more generic, maybe lack of respect for other people that is more than likely that might get transferred on to you later on. So it's kind of like a, hey, you really need to be paying attention here. Is kind of how I think about it. It's like stop. Red flag means stop and heavily evaluate.
Yeah, it's most definitely a indicator, a warning sign, just like, hey, pay attention to what is going on, be aware of what is going on. And also when you get these indicators, it is not the indicator that you should just completely cut this person off, right? You can possibly even address this head on with this person, be direct with this person, like, hey, I've noticed this characteristic in you, and just like get more clarity of what is going on in that situation, and just like trying to get a more of an understanding of how has this portrayed in your life, how, have you equipped this characteristic in your life that in my mind is more of an indicator like, oh, this is kind of is an unhealthy thing. So in looking into that, that's one way of handling red flags. But as far as like, if it leans more into the abusive aspect of the red flag, like the abusive spectrum of relationships, like if there's belittling or hitting or throwing things, never should you ever feel pressured into coming directly and addressing that issue. You should always make sure that your safety is your priority. And if the safest thing for you to do is to cut that person off, leave that person alone, leave that relationship alone for the time being, you do that.
Sorry. Hold on. Pause.
It'll be fun. Freeze. Everybody clap your hands.
I'm gonna see how. Okay. That's plenty of time.
Yeah.
We're good.
All right.
We're good. Okay. And cut back in now.
Yeah, and so hopping back
Yeah.
into that. Yeah, so just making sure that you always keep your safety a big priority. Never ever address anything that might put you in harm's way.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I also think that, just exactly like you said, red flags don't automatically mean that you need to cut something off necessarily, unless you feel like your safety is being compromised. And I mean, and you know what, if somebody makes you uncomfortable, you're in no way obligated to stay with them. You don't owe that to them. They're not entitled to you. So do whatever makes you feel the most comfortable and feel the most safe, and do whatever is most respectful to your own needs and boundaries and safety. But I definitely think there is something to be said about where some, not all, but some like red flags can come from, of like unhealed trauma
Mhm.
or like unresolved things that, we all carry. I think at any point in time, like we can all have different red flags. I have definitely had some red flags before, but like through time and intentionality and therapy, have been able to like work through some of those things so that those aren't really present in my life anymore. And it's definitely possible to like stay with someone as they work through and process that. Like that's a possibility. And it's I think it's important just to acknowledge that in most, if not, I don't want to say all, but in most for sure instances, it's possible to work through, like as the individual with the red flags, it's possible to work through and process some of those things and heal from that. So you're no longer like showing those behaviors, or like if it is like treating like servers and stuff with a lack of respect or things like that, like there are ways that you can learn and grow past like those behaviors, so
Yeah.
that's just kind of a thought.
Very, very valid, yes.
Yeah.
So, and then speaking of flags, what about green flags? How do we indicate when this is positive,
Yeah.
this is a green flag, this is good?
I think if it respects someone's boundaries,
Mm,
it's good. If it's like, communication, they have good communication skills. They don't automatically go to yelling or
Yes.
arguing. I think maybe even if like, they are able to understand your point of view and where you're coming from and not be like, yeah, but that's not right. But they're like,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. Your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts are valid. Let me share my point of view.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like that. Are they honest? Like, do they have the ability to tell you the truth and be honest not only with you, but with themselves when they communicate with you?
I also think that it's possible to have like fun and silly little green flags of like, are they like good with kids? Like even if you don't necessarily want kids, like, it's the test. I remember seeing this going on where it's like, will they pretend to answer whatever like inanimate object is handed to them by a toddler if the toddler says like it's for you and is indicating it's a phone? Like, are they going to take the fake phone and answer it and like play along? Like that's a green flag. I think without a doubt, like playing and having fun with kids is just like a good green flag for sure. So
That's a good example.
it just if it makes your heart fill with joy and like you just feel extreme affection for that person, it's probably a green flag. That's my thought.
Like maybe even if you're like a family person and they like respect and honor their family.
Yeah. Or respect and honor your family.
Oh yeah.
And like have good relationships with your siblings, or like a good strong relationship with your parents or your grandparents or cousins or friends.
People.
Yeah, and even seeing green flags with the person like having a positive experience even within their own family is green flag.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Yeah, because that can carry on into like if you guys decide to further you guys' relationship and you're in a serious relationship and you guys have to, coexist within both families. And if you have that positive aspect between your partner having a positive relationship with their siblings and their parents, then it will more likely flow over into once you guys maybe might decide to start your own family.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I know that reminds me of like my fiance was sick recently and she had always told me, yeah, I'm a baby when I'm sick. And so she was violently ill. And so I just told her and she was like, that's when I knew. And I was like, that's green flag. All right. All right.
Oh, and then we have some collections of examples from TikTok of beige flags that I think it would be fun. There's 3 different ones, so I think we should divide them up and read them to each other. So I would say I can go first with the first one, because this was one that was odd to me for sure. And so this user said, my boyfriend uses timers instead of alarms. If it's midnight and he has to wake up at 6, he will set a 6-hour timer.
It's odd.
And I said, oh,
Okay.
all right. So that's that one.
I could read the next one. My partner's beige flag is that they will always want to show me old pictures of themselves. They were just looking for a quick picture of something from a few years ago. Well, now it's time to look through their camera roll for a half an hour.
That's me.
I'm
I do
guilty,
that.
yeah,
I do
guilty
it
of
all the
that as
time.
well.
It's not my fault. I have lots of really funny memes and cat reaction pictures from 4
So you're
years
just
ago.
like
Yes.
scroll through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And find, like, oh, this is.
Yes, I will.
Especially if it's like Facebook memories and like
Yes.
pictures or events come
Yes,
along, I'm
yes,
like,
I will.
Oh, okay.
And then the other one that was mentioned was my boyfriend's beige flag is that no matter the restaurant, he will always ask the waiter what to order. No deliberation. He will blindly order what the waiter says. And that's a lot of trust
Yeah,
being
I-
put
that's a
on
lot of
someone you
trust.
don't know.
I have had this happen. Everett and I went to a restaurant in Fort Worth called Blue Sushi, and I am still relatively new to the world of sushi, so I'm still learning some stuff. But they had a bunch of different like options for appetizers, and he asked our waiter, his name was I think like Jacob or something. So Jacob, if you're out there, you're the man. But and he gave us the best recommendations ever, and to this day we still talk about going back all the time because it was so delicious. So I can advocate for asking the waiter. Sometimes they really know what's up. So he did not steer us wrong. But yeah, and then we have a couple of just quick examples. We talked about red flags, but here are just a couple that really stuck out. Of these are some things that kind of pop up really frequently of red flags. So there's won't admit when they're wrong, or they're really defensive. There's one that just literally in quote says, I enjoy ghosting people. That just doesn't communicate feelings of respect for other people. So be wary of that. Quote unquote, will cheat on you / overall bad girlfriend / won't leave my exes alone. Once again, not respectful.
Flag.
Yeah, that's a red flag
I don't
through
know.
and through. Part of that kind of trends into the abusive territory, I think. Just like speaking intentionally about cheating on somebody else's.
Yeah.
That's
Like
it.
respecting somebody's boundaries, like especially with the ex aspect of it, like if they have established like, no, this relationship has ended and
Mhm.
you're still trying to pursue
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
person.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will say that like, I do have people that I've, dated and still like friendly, like every
Yeah.
once in a while we'll be like,
Oh.
comment on each other's posts and
That's
things like that.
So different.
Yeah,
than-
but like,
So, yeah, I've had people pop up in my DMs a few times, or it's like you block somebody for safety reasons,
Mhm.
and then you think you blocked them across the board, and then your birthday rolls around and a message pops up somewhere, and you're like, there's a leak in the boat. There's a leak in the boat. So you patch the hole, and then but it leaves you on edge. It's stressful.
yeah.
So those are just a few more red flags, but is there anything else that you guys can think of before we start to kind of wrap up for today?
I remember texting someone at the time and was like, my niece Solana, my youngest niece, is like, she put ice cubes in her milk. And the person texted back and was like, ew. And I was like, oh my gosh, Becky said she does it sometimes too. And I got like a message like red flag, and I'm like, no. Like a beige flag?
It really,
Yeah.
no, it
Yeah.
definitely is a beige flag. That's why I'm glad that trend happened, because it did give us kind of this middle space to be like, here's this thing that makes me go kind of like, but it's not like, it doesn't make them a bad person,
Yeah.
and they haven't done anything
Yeah.
wrong. So it just kind of gives you that space to be kind of like, ooh, that's
Maybe like an ick,
Yeah.
but not like a
yeah, not like a bad, like a negative relationship ending ick, but just like a
oh.
kind of like a ooh. But that definitely. I feel like that leads us somewhat into a great transition for our relationship goals. So Maria, what do you have for us this week?
Okay. I have take some time to think about what are your red and green flags and beige flags. Like what for you is like a relationship ender, you know, whether it be it could be something as silly as like you don't like dogs, or it could be something like
If you have like 3 dogs, and
yeah,
they're
that
like,
might
I
be
never
like
want
a
dogs.
hard no.
That's
Or it could be like they tend to shut down when they, you know, there's something going on, or it could be like you said earlier, like they're really good with kids. Like take some time to figure out what you like in a relationship. And if you're currently in a relationship, do you see it in your relationship? And if so, you know, if you're in a safe place and feel like you can talk about it with, you know, in a healthy way with someone else, talk to them and see how you can change the behaviors, not just in them, but if you recognize them in yourself, you know, talk to them about that. And so just remember that we are like plants. We're always growing and changing. So we can always work towards correcting any kind of red flags that we might have.
Yeah, for sure. And then I have our recommendation. It's kind of related to the episode, but with a slight caveat, mainly focused on arts and crafts. So what you're gonna do is take some construction paper and use glue or tape. And you're going to make a chain, is what is considered like a red flag, green flag, beige flag. Add some beige in there.
Get some beige
Get some
paper.
beige construction paper and add it, and you're going to make a chain. And it's just a great way to practice awareness of different characteristics you can identify within your personal relationships, within yourself, that fall into those categories. So that is my recommendation.
I super love that.
Yeah.
Like I had to sit with that.
Coraline.
I had to sit with that for a second because I was like, that's such a good idea.
No, I want to make one.
I know, right? We'll be crafting after this episode's over, just to let you know. But thank you so much for joining us, not only for this episode, but for this season. Yay, mini summer season. It's been super fun. These episodes have been great. And we are so excited to be back with season 5 coming at you soon. So keep an eye out for that. Best way to stay up to date on that is subscribing to our YouTube channel or following us on Instagram. So head over to Instagram at ACCVC_prevention, and we will see you there. Bye.
Adios.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Real Relationship Goals. This episode was produced by the Prevention and Education Department of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. You can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention. See you next time.